Torah does that. Torah is the plumb line. The other thing, I think in the first section of the second degree, before we get into good stuff, that's worth noting is the password itself. So as you walk through different degrees of Masonry, you're given different handshakes, different passwords. The second degree password is Shibboleth. The story itself can be found in Judges 11. It's really Judges 10 through 12, but the meat of this narrative is in Judges 11. And it's a conflict with Ephraim. The tribe of Ephraim is quarreling with Jephthah, which is the son of a prostitute and a mighty warrior, and feeling slighted for being called to fight against the Amorites. The conflict escalates into a civil war with Jephthah and the Gileadites. And the Gileadites, with Jephthah's help, they win. And what they win is they secure the fords of the Jordan River. So this is kind of the banks of the Jordan River. And they identify as Ephraimites by their inability to pronounce the word Shibboleth. The Ephraimites could not say the word Shibboleth because of the dialect that they spoke. And Masons, or Freemasonry, seems to be aligning with Jephthah, the son of a prostitute. So as I started to unpack this, I look at the word, the Hebrew word there for mighty warrior that Jephthah subscribed to in Judges 11, verse 1. And wouldn't you know, it's the same Hebrew word used in Genesis 10 to describe Nimrod. So if you want to look it up, it's Strong's 1368 in the Hebrew. And one of the meanings of this word is the word giant, which is a very peculiar and interesting way to describe Jephthah and associated him with Nimrod. So I want to invite the audience into this research. Help Michael and I make this Canaanite bloodline connection here. I know it's there. It's right in front of our faces. I just didn't have the time to really, really unpack it. But I did find this connection with this Hebrew word, giant, which is subscribed to Nimrod.
I'm actually a big Seinfeld guy. I've watched all those episodes. If you guys are too, I'm going to point to an episode where Shibboleth, a type of Shibboleth, was actually used. It's called the Van Buren Boys, and Kramer unintentionally makes a street gang's Shibboleth by his outstretched fingers, like showing eight fingers instead of 10, signifying the eighth president, Martin Van Buren. So there was a street gang in this episode called the Van Buren Boys, and he actually he gave the sign, which was 8, which signifies the eighth president. So that kind of makes you, if you're kind of confused with Shibboleth, that's a type of Shibboleth. Another one I found really interesting, in IT, information technology, a Shibboleth is actually a community-wide password that enables members of that community to access an online resource without revealing their individual identities. So the origin server can vouch for the identity without giving the target server any other additional information. So it's kind of like a hidden gate. So it cannot be betrayed by outsiders. I thought that was cool too. It just shows you the different layers, possibly what Freemasonry is trying to do with the different layers of the degrees. But as far as Nimrod, yeah. So, Dan kind of laid it out there that, at least in my research, Nimrod became a giant. He wasn't born one. Like, he wasn't like one of the angels having sex. He wasn't the children of that. He was a normal person, and he became a giant. And then that's where you get a lot of your conspiracies regarding, DNA manipulation or something. But so that word, it is a mighty hunter. I think that's what Dan was talking about. Esau was also a mighty hunter. So that's a similar bloodline. Some identify him with Ninus. And according to Greek mythology, that was a Mesopotamian king and husband of Queen Semiramis. We've talked about that before, about, these different mythologies of all telling the same story. Some have identified Nimrod as the husband of Queen Semiramis. We're getting back to Freemasonry. According to the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, the legend of the craft in the old constitutions refers to Nimrod as one of the founders of Masonry. In the York MS, number 1, we read, "At ye making of the Tower of Babel, there was a masonry first much esteemed of, and the king of Babylon, called Nimrod, was a mason himself, and loved well masons." So, at least according to this Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, Nimrod was a mason. I know the writings of Abraham say he was a mason as well, but that's extra biblical. Read that if you will. And then finally, Josephus, what Josephus talks about this. We always love quoting Josephus regarding Yeshua and all that, but Josephus says Nimrod was the grandson of Ham, the son of Noah, a bold man and of great strength of hand. Josephus says he also gradually changed the government into tyranny, seeing no other way of turning men from the fear of God, but to bring them in a constant dependence on his power. Think about that. Is that
Wow.
happening today? Is there a spirit of Nimrod happening today? And finally, this is what,
That's, I mean,
yeah. Yep. And then, yeah, we'll get to that. And then Josephus talks about the Tower of Babel. He says they built a tower, neither sparing any pain or being in a degree negligent about the work. And by reason of the multitude of his hands employed it in it, it grew very high, sooner than anyone could expect. But the thickness of this tower was so great, it was strongly built. It was great height. It was built with burnt bricks, cemented together with mortar and bitumen, that it might not be liable to admit water. So it's even saying that it was higher than what the flood could have done. The phallic, everybody, they talk about, Nimrod and all that kind of stuff. Christmas tree. What do you think about all this stuff
I
regarding
mean, this
Nimrod?
is insane. That's such incredible research, dude. If you
Oh
guys
yeah.
want to dig more into that judge's narrative, if you see some other Canaanite bloodline at work and making the connection to that, I'd be curious to know who Jephthah's mom was. The Bible says she's a prostitute, but I don't believe it gives a name. So that would be interesting to find out. If I was a betting man, I'd say there's some Canaanite bloodline in that prostitute, but I'm just kind of throwing that out there. So the blindfold is removed. We got the password. We got rid of we set our obligation. Hoodwink is now off. So now we're being exposed to the information that's contained within the fellow